and welcome to Truth Trial, a show where you get to hear both sides of the issue and you get to form your own opinion. No brainwash, no bias, no rhetoric, just the truth. I'm Brooke Solis, and you're watching Truth Trial.
Let's take a look at our show lineup for tonight. Is Donald Trump right or wrong? Should we ban Muslims from entering the U.S.? Roger Stone, author of the New York Times bestseller, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, is a legendary political consultant who most recently has worked for Donald Trump. Author of The Clintons' War on Women, he is described by David Brooks in the New York Times as a dashing, colorful artist of the underhanded. Adam Kokesh is a popular, outspoken American talk show host, political activist, and author of the new best-selling book, Freedom.
Is Trump right or wrong? Should we temporarily suspend Muslim immigration?
I think our first duty is to protect the people who are U.S. citizens.
And first of all, the idea of constricting in any way freedom of movement based on anything other than private property is unethical.
There's no ethical or moral issue involved here because they do not have an inalterable right to come to this country. If you don't have a border, then you don't have a country.
But the religious aspect, that gets even more absurd. And my opinion here is that that's just silly.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
You're watching Truth Trial.
Hi, I'm Marcus Lloyd, and this is Truth Trial, where we put the important issues of the day on trial so you can decide the truth. Does it seem harder to wade through all that spin to figure out the truth? Well, you've heard of the court of public opinion, right? Well, this is it. Our question tonight, is Donald Trump right or wrong, and do we need a temporary ban on Muslims entering the country? Well, we have two debaters here to talk about the issue, so please welcome our first one, Roger Stone. Roger Stone is a political strategist and a New York Times best-selling author who has a new book out, The Clintons' War on Women. And his opponent today is Adam Kokesh, and he is a YouTuber, a political activist, and the author of the book Freedom. All right, Adam, so you get to go first. You have about 2 minutes to give your opening arguments. Then once you're finished, Roger, you will be able to respond with your opening arguments. And then we'll go into a umpired, if that's the right way to say, remarks between the both of you. We can do some follow-up questions and talk to each other and ask each other questions. Real debate for a good 5 minutes, right? And so it should be a lot of fun. So let's get this debate started. This is Truth Trial.
The idea of banning anyone from entering any particular geographic area based on government's edicts is absurd. The idea that we don't own ourselves, that we don't enjoy basic rights as human beings like freedom of movement, freedom of travel, freedom to decide where we live in the world is contrary to the basic concept of human rights, the basic concept of ethics. And what we've been scared into believing here in America is that we need to be afraid of the rest of the world, that people beyond our borders are somehow a threat to us. And yet the real threat is our very own government. Not only are we stolen from by cops more than burglars, we are terrorized more than by our own government, more than people outside of our country. In fact, now for the average American, you're over 50 times more likely to be killed by a cop than by a terrorist. And the whole concept of banning people based on religion, based on something that's in their own minds, is a silly, futile policy where if someone wants to come into this country to do people harm, all they have to do is raise a hand and say, oh, I'm a Christian now, it's okay. And I can tell you this from my personal experience. I was in Fallujah in 2004 with the Marine Corps on a civil affairs team. We were making enemies faster than we could kill them. And if we had been bombing, if the American government had been bombing and terrorizing India for all this time instead of the Middle East, we'd be talking about Hindu terrorism instead of Islamic terrorism. You can't just drone strike weddings, kill children, and lay millions of lives to waste. In Fallujah right now, most children, I should say a large portion of the children born, are born with birth defects still from the depleted uranium poisoning. These aren't people who hate America or us because of our freedom or because of their religion. They want to do terrorism because the American government has terrorized them for years. And the way to stop that is not to put up more barriers, but to bring people together. Banning people based on religion is only going to make all these problems worse.
We're not here to debate American foreign policy and the effects. Anybody who knows and has read my books understands that I, too, am a critic of the Bush-Clinton policies that have given us the rise of ISIS. And, of course, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, armed ISIS. But I am here to address the problem that we have today. There is a terrorist threat, and there is a force in the world that doesn't wish us well. We have 100,000 Syrian refugees who wish to come here. They are disproportionately young men. Where are the children? Where are the families? Where are the women? Secondarily, it is not unreasonable to assume that if 100,000 Syrian refugees want to come here, some subset of them are going to be terrorists. So Trump's proposal, to be very clear, a temporary ban on Muslim immigration until such time, if I can quote him directly, that our leaders can figure out what the hell's going on. If I can interpret that for you, what he means is until the time that we can have a system set up to vet and inspect those who would come here to determine their background and whether or not they pose a threat to the public safety. President Jimmy Carter banned Iranian immigration during the Iran hostage crisis. No one accused him of being a racist or a bigot. This is common sense. I believe in immigration. We are a country of immigrants. People who want to come here for a better life and for the promise of what America can be should be allowed to come here. But it is unrealistic, in fact, I think naive, to open our borders to anyone who wants to come here and believe that none of those people will do harm to Americans.
I don't really believe that the policy being temporary is even credible. I mean, it sounds like a temporary tax or a temporary bureaucracy. Obviously, the premise that we're going to, after we have this temporary policy in place, figure out a good way to screen out terrorists. Well, when is that? When is that going to happen? How does that even happen? Are we going to, and if you can ask people, I mean, this is based on self-reporting, of course. You know, I'm a Muslim, and they can't just say, well, I'm a Christian and get in. Why don't we just ask them? I mean, if this premise is legitimate, that we can just ask people and know their true feelings, why don't we just ask them if they're terrorists? And then we can say, well, no terrorists can come into the United States.
I have a better idea.
The idea that this policy is enforceable in any way, that's unrealistic and naive.
Entirely enforceable. This is really simple. Why shouldn't the U.S. Immigration Service be allowed to look at the social media postings of those who've applied to come here? Today, that is not allowed. It would be illegal. It makes common sense to see if someone has said Ali Akbar, death to the Jews, on their Facebook page. I wouldn't want those people in the country, and the Immigration Service shouldn't either. It is entirely doable in the age of high technology to determine the background of those who would come here. The problem is those who say that something can't be done. Something most definitely can be done.
So would you say that if someone was a Muslim a year ago and then converted to Christianity and has been posting nothing but lovely Christian peaceful posts on their Facebook page, now they can come in? Is your system that you're proposing that easy to defeat, that as a terrorist, if I want to come into this country, all I have to do is get the government to believe that I believe something other than what I really do? I mean, that's absurd.
That's the system you have now. Essentially, people come in and we believe anything they say. No, if you've been funded by the Muslim Brotherhood, if you've been arrested for terrorist crimes elsewhere in the world, if you have been incarcerated in Guantanamo but released and now want to come to the United States, all those things can be learned. This isn't the Middle Ages. We are a highly technical society. All those things, I think, should be criteria that are looked at before we let people in the country.
This is a way for government to give you a false sense of security when it really can't guarantee any security at all for a problem that is created in the first place. You know, we have TSA to protect us from terrorists on airplanes, because in airplanes you're in a large group of vulnerable people. So what do? We line up in crowds in front of TSA checkpoints to get groped and get that good false sense of security where we're standing in large groups where we're just as vulnerable. So this, again, it's a false sense of security that's another useless government program that can be easily gotten around. But even more importantly about the false sense of security, it's so easy to kill people. Human life is so very fragile, and we spend all of this time with these feudal policies and looking for a false sense of security, and it ends up creating more divisions and driving people away. Again, this is kind of like a pre-crime thing. You might commit a crime, being a Muslim, not that you have intent to, that you've shown terroristic threats or anything like that. And I'm all for that. As on a private property basis, if I know that someone has been a violent person in the past, I'm not going to let them on my property. I'm all for that. But having the government on such a larger scale say, because of religion, something that's a figment of your imagination in your head, that's what's going to be the way that we protect ourselves. That's silly, that's futile. And the danger of that is it encourages people to turn to government to keep us safe, when obviously it's been causing the problem of terrorism in the first place. The CIA calls it blowback.
Well, realistically, of course, those who have applied would still have their opportunity to be examined. The point here is to just temporarily halt this until your system is set up to vet those who would come. We need a new system. Now, Adam, you don't believe in any government at all. I believe in smaller and less intrusive government, but this is a question of public safety. And I do think that it's a good idea to look at those who want to enter the country. This isn't bigotry or racism. This is common sense.
Well, if it's a question of public safety, the best thing we can do for public safety is eliminate all institutionalized violence. That's what government is. Now, I'm not against all government in that blanket sense. I'm for self-government. We should own ourselves. That should be respected. We should be able to control our lives and our property without any external force coming in and telling us how to live. When we accept government as a monopoly on protection, which it really is as a protection racket, you don't have an option. This is not a free market proposition. This is a gun to your head that says you will accept our services or you go to jail. I reject that. I'm for a higher standard of ethics, and that we can address terrorism without going to the pre-crime paradigm.
The police departments you refer to, the federal government you refer to, are formed by the government that we voted in. So let's not make it sound like they are self-appointed. Now, do they have excesses? Without question. In this
You're
case,
the first to talk about stolen elections.
No, they're stolen. I've written a major piece on it in the Hill this week. They most definitely can be, but at the local level, I'm not sure that happens that much.
Wonderful. Hey, I want to cut you guys off. This has been a great debate. Thank you very much. But we'll be back in just a minute after the break, and we'll hear the closing arguments from both. Well, welcome back to Truth Trial. This is the portion of our show where we hear closing arguments from our debaters. And we're going to start with Adam Kokesh, YouTuber, political activist, and of course the author of the book Freedom. Adam, go ahead.
Thank you. Now, in terms of Roger's position here, I do not doubt his sincerity. I do not doubt his desire to see a safer America and a more prosperous, peaceful world. However, I believe there's a great intellectual flaw in this argument as a proposition that if someone came to you with, well, this might not be good, this might not be the right thing, but it's temporary, we'll figure out the solution later, that should really make you suspicious about whether the people behind this policy have your best interests at heart. And when it comes to this particular policy, if we could figure out a better immigration policy, why don't we just institute that right now? What's going to change? Are the greatest minds of American policy incapable of coming up with this, that we have to create this feudal safety blanket that's going to make us feel like we've got this false sense of security because we've banned Muslims from coming into the country? Obviously, it should not give you any sense of security to know that no Muslims can get into the country, even if that was a policy that government was capable of enforcing, because you're, like I said, over 50 times more likely to be killed by a cop than by a terrorist. There is a better system than arbitrarily keeping people out based on their religion, or even if not arbitrarily, based on the general demographic trends of terrorism today, but to do it based on religion, where someone can simply raise their hand and say, well, I'm a Christian now, it's okay. Or fake their online profile or make a new Facebook profile. I mean, really, we're relying on Facebook for national security now? Is that what this fear-mongering government has come to proposing for us? That Facebook is going to save us from terrorism? Well, in a sense it will, because it wakes people up. Along with everything else on the internet, we have so many amazing opportunities to share new information that lets us see past these government scams and rackets and this false perspective of seeing the world as something to be afraid of. And one of the the things that Roger pointed out about this government is that it was elected by the people, or that it was somehow justified because it has that popular support. Well, being popular obviously doesn't make something right. The fact that the American people support, or rather out of ignorance allow, the American government's foreign policy, which I do respect, Roger, that you are a great and credible critic of, I think what you're missing here is that there is this concept of blowback. And the people across the world who are inclined to terrorism, regardless of their religion, they don't hate us because we're free. Obviously, that's not really true anymore, if it ever was in this country. They hate us, if anything, because our government is hurting them and their people. So, you know, like I said, I know this from personal experience. I helped with the effort of imposing martial law on the country of Iraq. And you know that there are drone strikes that happen throughout the Middle East because Obama has ordered them. And I think this is still probably great progress, and you might agree, from widespread occupation where we're imposing martial law in these countries. But regardless, you're going to change people's religion to terrorism when you start terrorizing them. The greatest terrorists of the world are not the individuals who are upset with governments, but the governments themselves. Terrorism is using fear to control other people. And everything government does, whether it's this policy or taxation or regulation or driver's licenses, anything else, it's all backed up by the threat of force. That means you should be afraid that government is going to send men with guns to lock you in a cage if you don't do what you're told. Not only is that unethical, it's dangerous and contrary to the basic ideals of human rights, and it makes us less safe. So that's how we move forward as a species, again, towards a more free, prosperous, and harmonious society, is not by trying to judge people and limit their freedom based on the ideas in their heads, but respecting them as individual human beings. And if we could change the American government's policy to that, it wouldn't be creating so much terrorism in the first place.
Thank you very much, Adam. Roger, I'm sure you have some closing arguments, so we'll hear from Roger, who, of course, is a political strategist and a New York Times bestseller, and definitely has a new book out, The Clintons' War on Women. So,
thank you.
Stage.
Adam's right. We're not free. We're just the freest nation on the face of the earth. This democratic experiment is not ideal. It's just better than any other governmental system. You've praised the Founding Fathers because they rebelled against the Brits, but they gave us the form of government that we have, probably the most brilliant government ever devised by free men. Now, if one will examine the terrorist attacks in the last couple months, the Paris attack was caused by illegal immigrants who slipped seamlessly through the immigration system in France. This was also true of the San Bernardino killings. What kind of lessons do we need here? This is a dangerous world. We may have created some of this danger. That's a different debate, and I'd be happy to have it, but I'd need to be on the other side, because I think I agree with you. I opposed the Iraq War. I've opposed most of our policies. We shouldn't be nation building. That's not our job. But we are where we are today. The Obama administration has fostered ISIS. That's a fact. Trump's right about that. Hillary Clinton has armed them. He's right about that, too. And they don't wish us well. Therefore, it is not unrealistic to assume that some who wish to come here wish us harm. I don't want to see another San Bernardino. I had a friend killed in Orlando. These are personal issues, therefore, to me. Trump, I think, has come forward and asked for a halt, because it will take some reasonable time to set up a system that would allow us to investigate the backgrounds of those who would come here. By the way, under our current system, if someone is convicted of a crime abroad, they can't enter the country. So using the same criteria, if one has been funded or one has an affiliation or one has been involved in terrorist activities in other parts of the world, they shouldn't be allowed to come here. Not bigotry, not racism, common sense. Let's be clear, the two-party duopoly, the Republicans and Democrats, the elites at least, have given us our current system. They have failed us in the immigration area, as they have failed us when it comes to our foreign policy, which has created this problem to begin with, I would concede. They failed in terms of our fiscal policies, our trade policies. This is a Washington elite. It is not limited to one party. It's two parties. And in Donald Trump, I think you have someone who is an outsider, someone who is not connected to any of the failed policies of the last 30 years, someone who can look at each of these issues as he looks at immigration with a fresh eye, with a different approach, returning business sense, common sense to government. When the Founding Fathers determined our form of government, they envisioned part-time legislators, people who had a second profession, a cobbler, a lawyer, a doctor, whatever. Now we have career politicians who share one worldview. All you have to do is look at the mainstream media critique of Trump's proposal to see where our current establishment and those who like things the way they are on this issue. It's been near hysterical in the distortion of his view. It is not unrealistic or undoable to temporarily seal our borders from Muslim immigration until we have a reasonable and efficient system to determine who should be allowed to come here based on their background and their past activities and who should not. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. You guys gave us a nice, good look at the issues, and we thank you for coming on the show. That's all the time that we have. And now it's time for you, the viewer, to get involved. All you have to do is jump online and go to truthtrial.com or text the number on your screen and vote for who you think is right.
You've been watching Truth Trial. When we left off, Adam and Roger were squaring off in a hard-hitting debate. Let's take a look at the closing results between these two power debaters.
I feel great. No, it was a great exchange, and I mean, I don't think when you have the burden of proof, as Roger does in this debate, to say that we're going to institute a policy as opposed to we're not going to do that. I think he really failed to provide any kind of practical arguments for the legitimacy of that.
Yeah, Adam Kokesh is tough. I agree with everything he says if it were a perfect world. I mean, in the laboratory, he's absolutely right. It would be great if we didn't need a government. It'd be great if we didn't have to seal our borders. It'd be great if we didn't have to evaluate each person who wants to come into the country and move here. Unfortunately, we live in a very dangerous world. So without debating why terrorism has risen in the Middle Eastern region, because there is no question that the policies of the Clintons and the Bushes have given rise to ISIS and given rise, and that the Obama administration has armed ISIS, we're still faced with the reality of a terrorist movement across the country.
The idea of stopping someone from enjoying their freedom of movement, their self-ownership as a human being, that's unethical. The grounds that they're trying to propose in this policy, Trump and Roger Stone backing them up, I mean, that's just silly.
Remember not long ago, we were told that Al-Qaeda was on the run. Now suddenly, overnight, we're facing a new terrorist threat. The answer is really simple, to seal our borders and then to set up a system, as Donald Trump would say, to vet and inspect anyone who would want to come here, particularly using modern techniques like looking at their social media postings. If someone has written provocative and hateful things and has made threats against any other group of people, I don't think they're a good match to come to America. We currently bar criminals from coming here. Why could we not bar terrorists if 100,000 Syrian refugees want to come here? Right. Sadly, some subset of them are indeed terrorists who don't wish us well.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with another powerful debate.
That's all the time we have. Go to truthtrial.com or text the number on your screen to vote for the winner of the debate. Tune in next time for the results of the poll and for the next episode of Truth Trial. Got a great show idea for Truth Trial? We want your ideas. Submit your show ideas or tell us about your expertise on an important topic. We are on the lookout for credible, informed, and dynamic guests. Contact us now at www.truthtrialguestinfo.com. Join us at www.truthtrial.com every week to examine high-impact issues that affect your life. Do you know the facts? The real facts? Watch extended versions of our previous and current debates. Get an in-depth understanding, with both sides presented, of issues that directly impact you. Watch these one-on-one interviews up close with our host. You can also watch full shows of Truth Trial on our website anytime and cast your vote for the winner.